Most people believe danger announces itself. They think temptation comes loud, aggressive, obvious. They imagine the devil as something external, something that pushes, shouts, threatens. But wisdom begins when you understand a far more uncomfortable truth. The most dangerous voice you will ever hear is the one that sounds exactly like your own. The devil never needs to raise his voice. He doesn't need to scare you. He doesn't need to force you. All he needs is permission, and permission is easiest to obtain when it feels like your own idea. That is why his influence rarely arrives as darkness. It arrives as reason. It arrives as calm logic. It arrives as a thought that feels harmless, even intelligent. A suggestion wrapped in familiarity. He speaks through the cracks of your mind, not the walls, through moments when you're tired, when you're uncertain, when you feel unseen or unappreciated. And in those moments, his words don't feel foreign. They feel personal. They sound like common sense. You've done enough. You deserve this. It won't matter. You can fix it later. And because the voice is quiet, because it doesn't shock you, you let it stay. This is how influence works. Not by confrontation, but by agreement. The devil does not argue with you. He aligns with you. He mirrors your fears, your insecurities, your desires, and then gently nudges them in the wrong direction. He takes what already lives inside you and rearranges it just enough to lead you away from who you could be. That's why so many people destroy themselves while believing they are making reasonable choices. They don't wake up one day deciding to abandon their values, their discipline, their purpose. They drift, slowly, thought by thought, permission by permission. What begins as a small compromise becomes a pattern. What feels like a harmless thought becomes a habit. And by the time they notice the damage, they no longer remember when they agreed to it. A wise man learns to fear not the loud voice, but the quiet one. Because the loud voice is easy to recognize. It triggers resistance. But the quiet voice slips past your defenses. It sits beside you. It waits. And it speaks only when you're ready to listen. Understand this deeply. Not every thought deserves respect. Not every idea deserves action. Just because a thought appears in your mind does not mean it is yours. The mind is a place of traffic, not truth. Thoughts pass through constantly, and wisdom is not found in obeying them, but in observing them. The devil's greatest advantage is that most people never question the origin of their thoughts. They assume ownership. They assume truth. They assume alignment. And so they obey impulses that weaken them, justify behaviors that shrink them, and rationalize decisions that cost them years of their life. But the moment you pause, the moment you create distance between yourself and the thought, something powerful happens. You break the spell. The suggestion loses its grip, because influence only works when it remains invisible. A wise man listens carefully, not just to what a thought says, but to where it leads. Does it move him closer to discipline or away from it? Does it strengthen his character or soften it? Does it demand effort or does it offer comfort at the cost of growth? The devil always offers the easier path first, always, and that is how you recognize him. He will tell you rest is better than consistency. He will tell you comfort is better than courage. He will tell you avoiding pain is smarter than facing it. And none of these sound evil. That's the danger. They sound humane. They sound compassionate. They sound like self-care. But taken too far, they become self-destruction disguised as kindness. Wisdom is learning to hear the suggestion without accepting it, to let the thoughts speak but not decide, to understand that discipline begins internally, long before action ever takes place. Every strong man you admire did not become strong by silencing the world first, but by questioning his own mind. And make no mistake, this is not about paranoia, it's about responsibility. The devil does not control your thoughts, he only suggests. You choose whether to entertain, repeat, or dismiss them. That choice, repeated daily, shapes the direction of your life. You don't lose your way all at once. You lose it one quiet agreement at a time. One thought you didn't challenge, one excuse you didn't question, one moment where you mistook familiarity for truth. So learn to sit with your thoughts. Learn to watch them rise and fall without immediately obeying. Ask yourself who benefits if you follow them. Ask yourself where they lead in 5 years, not 5 minutes, because the devil thinks in moments, but wisdom thinks in lifetimes. And when you begin to recognize that voice for what it is, not an enemy shouting, but a whisper inviting, you gain something priceless, clarity. And clarity is the beginning of freedom. Because once you can hear the suggestion without surrendering to it, you have already taken the first step toward mastery. There's a reason the most powerful forces in the world rarely use force at all. Control achieved through pressure creates resistance, but control achieved through consent creates loyalty. This is a truth wise men learn early, and careless men learn too late. The devil understands this better than anyone, which is why he never issues commands. Commands awaken pride, commands invite rebellion, but suggestions feel safe. Suggestions feel optional, and because they feel optional, they are almost always accepted. When Miona orders you to do something, your instinct is to question it. You ask why. You look for an escape. But when a thought enters your mind gently, when it presents itself as a possibility rather than a demand, you lower your guard. You don't feel threatened. You don't feel controlled. You feel like you are still in charge. And that illusion of control is the doorway through which influence walks in. The devil never says, destroy your discipline. He says, you've been consistent for a while, missing one day won't matter. He never says, abandon your values. He says, this situation is different. He never says, give up on your future. He says, right now is not the right time. And each of these thoughts feels reasonable when heard alone. That is the danger. Isolated suggestions rarely look dangerous. It's their accumulation that ruins a man. A wise man understands that the mind is not conquered by invasion, but by invitation. Every destructive habit begins as a suggestion that was never challenged. Every regret began as a thought that felt small enough to ignore. People don't fall because they were overpowered. They fall because they agreed. This is why suggestions are far more effective than orders. Orders demand immediate action. Suggestions plant seeds, and seeds, once planted, grow quietly. They don't announce themselves. They don't rush. They wait. A suggestion today becomes a justification tomorrow. A justification becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes an identity. And by the time the man looks in the mirror, he no longer recognizes who he has become. The devil is patient. He doesn't need you to choose destruction today. He only needs you to delay discipline. He only needs you to soften your standards. He only needs you to bend once. Because once a standard is bent, it is never as strong again. The next bend becomes easier, and soon what once felt unthinkable feels normal. Understand this, the devil is not interested in dramatic failures. Those attract attention. He prefers quiet erosion. He prefers the slow weakening of resolve, the gradual lowering of self-respect, the subtle shifting of boundaries. He knows that a man who still believes he is in control is the easiest man to control. A wise man learns to recognize the language of suggestion. It always sounds like compromise. It always sounds like delay. It always sounds like justification. Just this once. You can make up for it later. No one will know. It's not that serious. These phrases are never shouted. They are whispered. Whispers feel personal. They feel private. They feel safe. But safety is often the disguise of stagnation. Growth requires discomfort. Discipline requires friction. And anything that consistently invites you away from discomfort is quietly steering you away from growth. The devil doesn't pull you toward pain. He pulls you toward comfort. And comfort, when worship becomes a prison. Most men believe freedom means having no restrictions. Wisdom teaches the opposite. True freedom is choosing your restrictions consciously. It is deciding what you will not negotiate with your own mind. Because if you do not set boundaries internally, suggestions will set them for you. The strongest men are not those who never hear tempting thoughts. They are those who have trained themselves not to negotiate with them. They don't debate every impulse. They don't argue with every excuse. They recognize the pattern, and they end the conversation early. This is not rigidity. This is clarity. Every time you entertain a suggestion, you strengthen it. Every time you resist it, you weaken it. The mind learns from repetition. What you tolerate today becomes easier tomorrow. What you refuse today becomes quieter over time. This is how mastery is built, not through grand victories, but through small refusals. A wise man also knows that suggestions often wear the mask of intelligence. They present themselves as rational analysis. They appeal to logic without vision. They focus on immediate relief while ignoring long-term consequence. They ask, "How do you feel right now?" but never ask, "Who are you becoming?" The devil does not care about your comfort tomorrow. He cares about your surrender today. And surrender rarely feels like surrender when it arrives gently. It feels like choice. It feels like autonomy. It feels like freedom. But freedom that leads you away from discipline is not freedom at all. It is drift. So be careful what you agree with, even in silence. Be careful what you allow to pass without challenge. Not every suggestion deserves consideration. Not every thought deserves a response. Sometimes the most powerful act is refusal without explanation. You don't need to fight every battle loudly. You don't need to announce your resistance. You only need to decide, quietly and firmly, who is in control. Because the moment you stop agreeing with the wrong suggestions, their power over you begins to fade. And that is when you realize a simple truth: the devil never had authority over you, only the permission you gave him. Before anything in your life collapses outwardly, it collapses inwardly first. Long before a man loses his discipline, his direction, or his dignity, he loses a private battle no one else can see. This is the truth many avoid because it removes excuses. The real battlefield has never been the world outside you. It has always been the space between your thoughts. Nothing you do begins with action. Action is only the final echo of a decision already made in the mind. Every habit, every word spoken in anger, every compromise, every act of courage or cowardice was first approved silently. The mind signs the permission slip before the body ever moves. And once you understand this, you stop blaming circumstances and start paying attention to yourself. The devil understands this better than most men ever will. That is why he does not waste energy on your actions. He aims for your thoughts. He knows that if he can influence how you think, how you interpret, how you justify, your actions will follow naturally. He doesn't push you into bad decisions. He convinces you they are reasonable. This is why two men can face the same situation and walk away changed in completely different ways. One grows stronger, the other weaker. One learns, the other repeats. The difference is not intelligence or opportunity. It is what happens internally before anything happens externally. The mind is where meaning is assigned, and meaning determines direction. A wise man learns to treat his mind like sacred ground. Not every thought is allowed to build a home there. Not every idea is allowed to stay overnight, because once a thought settles in, it begins to influence how you see yourself, how you see others, and how you see the future. And slowly, without force, it begins to shape your identity. Most people believe they lose control in moments of crisis. That's not true. They lose control in moments of unguarded thinking. When the mind is left unattended, it drifts toward comfort, fear, and justification. It looks for shortcuts. It looks for relief. And the devil waits patiently in that drift. Understand this clearly: the mind does not need loud temptation to fall. It only needs unchecked repetition. A thought repeated often enough becomes familiar. Familiarity becomes comfort. Comfort becomes belief. And belief becomes behavior. This is how people end up living lives they never consciously chose. The battlefield is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is fought in ordinary moments. When you wake up tired, when no one is watching, when quitting feels logical, when discipline feels unnecessary. These are not moments that look important, but they are decisive, because the mind is choosing what kind of man you are becoming, one thought at a time. A wise man does not try to silence his mind. He trains it. He observes patterns. He notices which thoughts lead him towards strength and which ones slowly drain him. He understands that not every internal voice is wise just because it sounds calm. Some of the most destructive thoughts arrive without urgency. The devil does not say, "Be weak." He says, "You've earned rest." He does not say, "Give up." He says, "Just pause for now." He does not say, "Lower your standards." He says, "Be realistic." And if these thoughts are never questioned, the mind begins to work against the man instead of for him. The moment a man stops guarding his mind is the moment the battle is already lost, because once the mind is compromised, discipline feels heavy, effort feels pointless, and excuses feel intelligent. And when effort feels foolish, decline becomes inevitable. A wise man knows that self-control is not about suppressing desire, but about directing attention. What you focus on grows stronger. What you repeatedly allow shapes your internal world. If you feed your fears, they will guide you. If you feed your discipline, it will lead you. This is why the mind must be trained daily, not occasionally. You don't wait for a crisis to build strength. You build strength so crises don't break you. You don't wait for temptation to learn self-control. You practice awareness so temptation finds no weak entry. The devil loses power the moment a man becomes conscious of his own thinking. Awareness disrupts influence. The moment you can say, "This thought is leading me away from who I want to be," you have already stepped out of its control. Influence thrives in automation, not awareness. A wise man asks better questions. He does not ask, "How do I feel about this?" He asks, "Where does this lead?" He does not ask, "Is this easy?" He asks, "Is this strengthening me?" Because feelings change quickly, but consequences are patient. When the mind is disciplined, actions become simpler. You don't need motivation every day. You don't need emotional energy. You move because you have already decided who you are. That decision, made internally and reinforced daily, is the strongest defense a man can have. Remember this: the devil cannot defeat a man who has mastered his mind. He can suggest, distract, whisper, but he cannot command. Authority is only granted when awareness is absent. The battle is not won by force, but by clarity. Win the battle in the mind, and the rest of life follows. If there is one thing a wise man learns with time, it is that temptation does not hunt strength. It hunts weakness. Not moral weakness alone, but human weakness. Fatigue, loneliness, doubt, discouragement. The devil is not reckless. He does not waste effort attacking when you are alert, disciplined, and grounded. He waits, he watches, and he strikes when you are tired of holding yourself together. Weak moments are never announced. They arrive quietly, often disguised as ordinary days. A long stretch of effort without recognition. A night when sleep didn't come. A season where progress feels invisible. In those moments, your guard is not down because you are careless, but because you are human. And that is when suggestions begin to feel less like temptation and more like relief. The devil understands timing better than force. He knows that a man who is exhausted will justify what a rested man would reject. He knows that a lonely heart will accept company it would otherwise refuse. He knows that a discouraged mind will believe lies it would normally laugh at. So he waits until resistance feels heavy, until discipline feels unfair, until endurance feels pointless. This is why so many people fall not at their lowest moral point, but at their lowest emotional one. They don't fail because they want to be weak. They fail because they want to stop hurting. And the devil is always ready to offer relief without healing, comfort without growth, escape without solution. A wise man does not shame himself for having weak moments. He respects them. He studies them. He knows that weakness is not a character flaw, it is a condition. But he also knows that unmanaged weakness becomes a doorway. Awareness is not about perfection, it is about preparation. The devil does not tempt you with things you don't want. He tempts you with what feels like medicine for your pain. When you feel unappreciated, he offers validation. When you feel overwhelmed, he offers avoidance. When you feel empty, he offers distraction, and each offer feels justified because it meets a real emotional need, but in the wrong way. This is where wisdom separates reaction from response. A wise man understands that not every feeling needs to be acted upon immediately. Feelings are signals, not commands. Fatigue is a signal to rest wisely, not to abandon discipline. Loneliness is a signal to seek connection, not to lower standards. Doubt is a signal to reflect, not to retreat. The danger is not weakness itself. The danger is ignorance of weakness. A man who believes he is strongest when he feels strong is already vulnerable. True strength is knowing when you are most likely to make poor decisions and preparing for those moments in advance. The devil loves unguarded evenings, late nights, quiet rooms, moments when the world goes silent and the mind grows loud. He loves the hours when no one is watching, when accountability feels distant, when tomorrow feels abstract. Because in those moments, consequences feel unreal and comfort feels urgent. A wise man plans for his weak moments when he is strong. He does not trust his future self to suddenly become disciplined in the middle of exhaustion. He sets boundaries ahead of time. He simplifies decisions. He removes temptations not because he is afraid, but because he is honest about human nature. There is wisdom in admitting that willpower is not infinite. The devil waits for you to rely on it alone. He knows that fatigue drains judgment faster than desire. That is why discipline must be supported by structure, not just intention. Weak moments also distort perception. What feels unbearable in exhaustion feels manageable after rest. What feels hopeless in loneliness feels temporary in connection. The devil depends on this distortion. He wants you to decide permanently based on a temporary state. He wants you to believe that how you feel right now is how things truly are. A wise man delays decisions when emotions are loud. He does not make promises, break commitments, or redefine his values in moments of weakness. He understands that clarity returns, but consequences remain. There is also a deeper truth here. Weak moments are not signs that you are failing. They are signs that you are growing. Resistance creates fatigue. Discipline creates friction. If you were not pushing forward, there would be no strain. The devil wants you to interpret strain as failure, but it is often proof of progress. The moment you feel tired of being strong is often the moment strength is working. And that is why the devil arrives then, not before, not after. He arrives at the edge, when one more step feels unfair, when endurance feels unrecognized. A wise man reframes these moments. He tells himself, this is not the time to listen, this is the time to endure. He knows that the voice urging escape grows loudest right before a breakthrough, not after one. Self-awareness in weak moments is more valuable than confidence in strong ones. Anyone can make good decisions when life feels easy. Wisdom is revealed in restraint when life feels heavy. The devil does not need you to collapse completely. He only needs you to loosen your grip. One skipped discipline, one compromised boundary, one rationalized indulgence. From there, momentum does the rest. So learn yourself, learn your patterns, learn when you are most likely to lie to yourself. Because once you can name your weak moments, they lose their power to surprise you. And a man who is no longer surprised by his weakness is no longer easily controlled by it. There is a misunderstanding about strength that confuses many men. They believe strength must be loud to be real. They believe discipline should feel intense, dramatic, visible. They chase motivation, speeches, bursts of emotion, thinking that power announces itself. But wisdom teaches something quieter. True discipline does not argue, perform, or explain itself. It simply refuses. The devil thrives in noise. He thrives in internal debate, emotional storms, endless justification. He wants you talking to yourself, negotiating, convincing, defending. Because as long as the mind is noisy, it is distracted. And a distracted mind is easy to guide. Discipline, on the other hand, is calm. It does not shout back. It does not wrestle every thought. It ends conversations before they become negotiations. A wise man knows that every internal argument weakens resolve. The more you debate a destructive thought, the more attention you give it. Attention is energy. And whatever you feed grows stronger. This is why discipline is not about overpowering temptation, but about starving it. Silence is not passive. Silence is control. When a tempting thought arises and is met with no discussion, no justification, no emotional response, it begins to fade. The devil cannot persuade someone who refuses to engage. He cannot manipulate someone who does not explain themselves internally. Most people exhaust themselves fighting thoughts loudly. They replay arguments in their head. They scold themselves. They promise change tomorrow. They create drama where clarity would suffice. A wise man does none of this. He hears the thought, recognizes it, and moves on without ceremony. This is the quiet strength most people never develop, the ability to say no internally without emotion, without anger, without guilt, just a simple refusal. And in that simplicity, the devil loses leverage. Discipline is built in the moments no one applauds, in the private hours, in the small decisions that feel insignificant. You do not feel powerful when you choose discipline, you feel ordinary. And that is precisely why it works. It does not inflate the ego. It does not create dependency on feeling strong. It becomes a way of being. The devil wants spectacle. He wants extremes. He wants you either highly motivated or deeply discouraged. Both states are unstable. Discipline lives in the middle. It is boring, repetitive, predictable, and because it is predictable, it is reliable. A wise man understands that consistency defeats intensity every time. Loud motivation fades. Quiet habits remain. The devil can wait out your motivation. He cannot wait out your structure. This is why discipline must become automatic. Not something you decide each day, but something you return to without thought. The less emotional energy discipline requires, the less opportunity the devil has to interfere. When action no longer depends on feeling, temptation loses its audience. Silence also protects you from pride. Loud discipline seeks recognition. It wants to be seen, validated, admired. And pride is another doorway the devil uses. A man who needs to feel strong is easily weakened. A man who simply acts is difficult to move. The strongest refusals are the quiet ones. No announcement, no explanation, no internal drama, just absence of compliance. The devil does not fear shouting resistance. He fears indifference, because indifference starves influence. There is a reason wise men simplify their lives. Fewer decisions, clear routines, non-negotiable standards. Complexity creates fatigue. Fatigue invites suggestion. Silence is not only internal, it is structural. It is choosing environments that support discipline instead of testing it. A wise man removes himself from unnecessary temptation, not because he is weak, but because he is intelligent. He does not prove strength by standing in fire. He proves it by not standing there at all. Discipline also means knowing when not to respond. Not every urge needs suppression. Some need to be ignored. Attention gives weight. Silence lets thoughts pass like weather. The devil whispers because whispers invite response. He wants you to lean in, to listen closely, to reply. Discipline does not lean in. It stays steady. It keeps moving. And this, the quieter your discipline becomes, the less exhausting it feels. The less exhausting it feels, the more sustainable it is. And sustainability is what wins long wars. A wise man is not at war with himself every day. He has already decided. The battle is no longer dramatic because the outcome is settled. He does not wake up asking who he will be. He already knows. This is the kind of strength that outlasts temptation. Not forceful resistance, but calm refusal. Not loud resolve, but silent consistency. And when discipline becomes silence, the devil finds no one to talk to. There comes a moment in every man's life when something subtle but powerful shifts. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not feel like victory. It feels like distance. Distance between the thought and the reaction. Distance between the suggestion and the decision. And in that space, mastery is born. Most men live inside their thoughts without realizing it. They don't hear them as suggestions. They hear them as commands. If a thought appears, it must be obeyed. If an emotion arises, it must be acted upon. This is not freedom. This is reflex. And reflex is easy to control. The devil depends on reflex. He depends on speed. He depends on the mind moving so fast that it never pauses long enough to question direction. That is why questioning the voice is such a threat. The moment you slow down enough to observe a thought instead of following it, you break the chain. A wise man learns that thoughts are not orders, they are invitations. Some deserve attention, most do not. But until you learn to question them, they all feel equally important. They all feel urgent. They all feel true. The most dangerous thoughts are not the dark ones. They are the reasonable ones. The ones that explain themselves well. The ones that feel calm, logical, even wise. This is who you are. This is just how life works. This is as far as you'll go. These thoughts do not attack you, they define you, and anything that defines you without your consent is a form of control. Questioning the voice does not mean fighting your mind. It means stepping back from it. It means asking, quietly and honestly, is this thought leading me towards strength or away from it? Not how it feels, not how convincing it sounds, but where it leads. This single question changes everything. Because the devil can make weakness feel good for a moment, but he cannot make it lead anywhere worthwhile. He can offer comfort, but not growth. He can offer escape, but not direction. And when you begin to judge thoughts by their destination instead of their tone, his influence weakens. A wise man understands that clarity is not loud. It does not rush. It does not panic. It simply sees. And once you see clearly, obedience becomes a choice, not a habit. There is power in noticing patterns, the thoughts that appear when you are tired, the ones that come when you feel overlooked, the ones that show up when progress feels slow. These are not random. They are predictable, and what is predictable can be prepared for. The devil loses his disguise the moment you recognize his timing. When you realize that the same excuses show up in the same emotional states, you stop believing they are truths. They are patterns, and patterns exist to be broken. Questioning the voice also requires humility. It means admitting that not everything in your head is wise just because it's familiar. Familiarity creates trust, but trust without evaluation creates captivity. A wise man does not assume that his first thought is his best thought. He pauses, he watches, he allows clarity to catch up to impulse, and in that pause, the illusion of urgency fades. Mastery is not control over the world. It is control over response. The ability to feel an urge and not become it. The ability to hear a suggestion and not surrender to it. This is not suppression. It is discernment. The devil thrives where identity is fragile. When a man does not know who he is, every thought gets a vote. Every emotion gets authority. But when identity is clear, thoughts must align with it to remain. A wise man decides who he is before temptation arrives. He does not ask himself in the moment. He has already answered. And because the answer is settled, the question loses power. Questioning the voice is how you reclaim authorship of your life. You stop being a passenger in your own mind. You stop reacting and start choosing. And choice is where dignity lives. This does not make life easy. It makes it honest. You will still feel doubt. You will still feel fear. You will still feel desire, but they will no longer decide for you. They will inform you, not command you. The devil does not fear strong emotions. He fears clear awareness, because awareness exposes suggestion. It reveals motive. It removes disguise. When you can sit with a thought without immediately obeying it, you are no longer controlled by it. When you can let an urge pass without acting, you are no longer owned by it. And when you can question the voice calmly, without anger or fear, you have already won more than you realize. Freedom does not come from silencing the devil. It comes from seeing him clearly. And once you do, his voice is no longer convincing. It is merely noise.